listening to the Mo.news podcast. I'm Moshe Nunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Jill, since this is a news podcast, let's start with a major headline. This one for us here at Mo.news. We have officially hit 5 million downloads of the Mo.news podcast.
Yay! That is big. That is a big number, Moshe.
5 million times you guys have entrusted us to provide you with perspective on what's happening here in the U.S. and around the world. We're so grateful to all of you who have been supporting, sharing, submitting reviews for this podcast.
Look, there are countless ways to get news these days. Countless news podcasts. There's countless just other podcasts. There's plenty of ways to spend your time and things pulling people in various directions for their time and attention. So the fact that people are trusting us and choosing to spend even a little bit of their day with us is incredibly appreciated. And I'm so grateful for it. So thank you so much to everybody who has tuned in. I guess that's still an appropriate expression, even though it's a podcast. And Moshe, I have to say, I feel really lucky that I get to do this with you every day. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to just kind of talk news every day, especially in the current state in terms of what's going on.
Yeah, Jill, I'm grateful to you for joining this project. When we initially started this just over 2 years ago, summer of 2022, you were 8 months pregnant, almost 9 months pregnant.
Yes.
Like, now is the time to start a podcast before you go on maternity leave.
The baby was coming.
Like 1 second. But it's been an amazing 2 years. I can't wait for what's in store here. And to your point, this is a great way not only to help all of you process the news. We know that it has a calming effect on a number of you. It has a calming effect on us. We're people too. And as we go through the headlines, I think going through the process of writing, producing, and recording this podcast also helps us process all the things happening in the world.
Absolutely. And also just so thankful for our team, the team at 1022, who helps edit and distribute the podcast. Plus, we've got the interview podcast and the premium podcast. There's Jeff and Callie, Steve, Arian, Jessica, Lauren, and Khaled, who make sure that it all goes onto YouTube. So it takes a village, as they say, Moshe.
It takes a village. We appreciate the whole village, all of you who listen, all of you who share it with your friends and family, and everyone who's part of producing this.
And everyone who's helped spread the word. We have grown entirely organically. We have done no ads, nothing like that. So again, just it's really humbling. Thank you all so much for listening. And
most importantly, to our families, to our spouses, who tolerate the interruption 5 days a week and sometimes on weekends, depending on breaking news, into our lives to ensure that we can put together and distribute the podcast. So thanks to Alex.
And of course, thanks to my husband, Michael. And it's true. It's because we can't record this podcast during a normal 9 to 5 work day, because it would be outdated by the time that you listen to it the following morning. And so we have to record this at night. It conflicts with dinner, bath time, bedtime, all sorts of really important family time that Moshe and I are like, nope, we're recording the podcast. Sorry.
Good luck with putting the baby to sleep.
Tell me how it goes. Anyway, thank you guys. And Moshe, shall we get to what is yet another packed day of news?
Jill, this week has been a year. Happy Friday to you.
All right, let's get to the headlines. Donald Trump making his first public remarks since the assassination attempt on his life as he accepts the Republican nomination for president. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, calls growing louder for Joe Biden to drop out of the race.
But the big question, Jill, is he hearing them?
Speaking of that assassination attempt, we do have some new details about the shooter, but still no clear motive. One of the more contentious issues this election season, immigration. Well, some new numbers are out and they show that migrant crossings continue to plunge, and they're actually nearing a level that would lift President Biden's border crackdown. We've also got some new numbers about Amazon Prime Day. It has driven U.S. online sales to a record $14.2 billion. And Moshe, I have an important question for you. What is in our toilet paper?
Good question, Jill. We'll have some answers for you later in the podcast.
The WNBA is close to a very big media deal. We'll tell you about it.
Not quite where the NBA is making, but certainly a vast improvement from their previous contract.
Yeah, the Caitlin Clark effect. And two notable deaths to tell you about: Lou Dobbs and Bob Newhart. Plus, it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend, what we are watching, reading, and eating.
It's a J.D. Vance themed segment today, Jill.
All right, now to the news. The Republican National Convention in Milwaukee is a wrap. Last night, former President Trump took center stage. The stated theme for the evening, unity. These were his first public remarks since he nearly lost his life in an assassination attempt on Saturday. And he says that in the aftermath of the shooting, he decided to rewrite his entire speech from scratch. He told ABC that he had written a humdinger of a speech, but decided, again, to rework the whole thing and make it less divisive and more about uniting the country. Speaking of unity, Donald Trump was surrounded by his entire family, including Melania, who until last night had not appeared at the convention or any campaign events. Spouses of presidential candidates are usually present throughout the convention, and they usually give a speech. If you remember, Melania did speak during the RNC in both 2020 and 2016, but not this year. Back to the former president, though, his goal was to strike a note of unity. Did the message get through?
So, Jill, he promised a humdinger of a speech, and I guess if you rate it by length, you could call it a humdinger. Jill, it was the longest convention speech in history. He started the speech just after 10:30 p.m. on Thursday, ended it early in the morning on Friday, just past midnight, the longest speech in convention history in America. He actually breaks his own record from 2016, so he holds the number 2 slot, and he actually holds the number 3 slot as well. So it lasted an hour and 32 minutes. His previous speeches, by the way, hour 20 and hour 14, respectively. The average length of a film in America, an hour and 31 minutes, so 1 minute longer than the average film. I think you can split into 2 parts. There was the planned speech that they touted about unity, about reaching out, and you certainly heard a bit of that very early on. And then it went into Trump's typical ad-libbing at rallies. I don't know how many people watch the average Trump rally, but this is what he does. He goes for an hour and a half. He's jumping from story to story, telling various anecdotes. And while the goal was unity, at the top, he talks about how he's going to be the president for all Americans, not half of America. We can't let our politics divide us. We must not demonize our political opponents. It was very much a new, somber tone. So for the first 15 or so minutes, if you were watching, you're like, oh, this is a changed Donald Trump. Past 11 p.m., you start to get the traditional Trump. References to crazy Nancy Pelosi, deface the nation, a reference to Face the Nation, the CBS show. So going after the media, deface the nation. Democrats used COVID to cheat on elections. He talked about the 10 worst presidents of all time. If you add it up, they haven't done the damage that Biden has done. He praised Kim Jong-un and Viktor Orban, showing his relationship with various authoritarian rulers around the world. Talking about mass deportation, comparing migrants to Hannibal Lecter, the serial killer from Silence of the Lambs. He does this a lot at rallies where he refers to the late, great Hannibal Lecter. A fictional character, of course. He talks about the world is teetering on the edge of World War III. Anyway, you get the point. So that was tone, right? You had the uniting tone, and then you sort of had the traditional Trump for the last, 70 or so minutes of the speech. Notably, the top of the speech, in addition to having the unity theme, he also recounted the second-by-second assassination attempt. This was a very compelling portion of the speech at the beginning here. Talked about his experience nearly being killed. Here's a bit of that.
I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Not supposed to be here.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Thank you. But I'm not. And I'll tell you, I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God. In watching the reports over the last few days, many people say it was a providential moment probably was when I rose surrounded by Secret Service. The crowd was confused because they thought I was dead, and there was great, great sorrow. I could see that on their faces as I looked out. They didn't know I was looking out. They thought it was over. But I could see it, and I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight."
So you hear at the top there, he's telling the crowd, I'm not supposed to be here. And then they're chanting, yes, you are. Yes, you are. And he thanks God that he's still alive. So that was the scripted portion again. Then he goes into his normal talking points, drill baby drill, end electric vehicle mandates, which is interesting, by the way, because Elon Musk has endorsed him. But he says we should end EV mandates. I'm going to bring interest rates down. I'm going to bring inflation down. I'm going to bring gas prices down. I'm going to stop the invasion. He said that illegal immigrants are taking 107% of jobs in America, particularly from Black and Latino Americans. He said he would end every international crisis around the world, that the war in Ukraine, the attack on Israel would never have happened if he was president, and he's going to solve them immediately. So, that's effectively what we've heard from Trump before. So you had this sort of change man experience, the unity experience, the recounting the assassination experience. And then if you were watching the last 2/3 of the speech between 11 and past midnight, he was just going through the sort of greatest rally hits that he typically delivers here. So it's been a very interesting thing watching this convention, because it's been a very disciplined convention here. As we've been talking about all week, they've been hitting a lot of messages, a lot of groups, hitting minorities, hitting union workers, hitting blue-collar workers, hitting veterans, the Jewish community, the Black community. And they've been very strategic with the speakers there. And certainly they had a goal last night with Donald Trump's speech, which I'm sure is going to be distributed on social media. They're very savvy. They know that the vast majority of Americans were not watching live television on a Thursday night in July for an hour and a half. They're going to consume it on YouTube, on Instagram, via podcasts, highlights. So they'll be able to clip strategically what they need to do here. I think the political watchers, though, and the people who watch the speech know that, this is the Trump that we watched for 4 years. While they say that what took place on Saturday changed him in a way, it appears based on the majority of that speech, he's the same guy that he was on Saturday, as he ad-libbed, went off teleprompter, sometimes for 10, 15 minutes at a time, doing his normal shtick. But on the whole here, a successful convention for the Republicans. It comes as the Democrats are in disarray. We're going to talk about that in just a couple minutes here on the pod. And Jill, one notable thing in the lead up to Trump, the lead up to the president at a convention typically is when you put out, a former president endorsing the president, the first lady. It is the greatest hits. It's the most watched night of the convention. Notably, in the lead up to Donald Trump tonight, he had his son, Eric, Kid Rock perform a song. The wrestler Hulk Hogan talked about how it's going to be Trump mania. He ripped his shirt off. We have a clip of that on Instagram endorsing Trump. And then he had Dana White of the Ultimate Fighting introduce him. So as we've been talking about all week, a very different Republican Party than one that we've known for many decades. It's completely become Trump's party here. And he put together the program in the way that he wants, in a way that he believes reaches average Americans in a way that the traditional Republican Party did not. So that's where we stand. And now all of the attention shifts to who his opponent's going to be. What is happening with Joe Biden and the Democratic Party right now?
All right, now to the Democratic side. President Biden is off the campaign trail, and he's now in Delaware after testing positive for COVID-19. His doctor says he has mild symptoms, no fever, and has started the antiviral drug Paxlovid. It comes, though, Moshe, at least politically, at the worst possible time for the president, whose health and age have been a huge concern for potential voters.
Yeah, some people are like, well, do you think they're making it up because he needs to rest? I go, is there a worse time? Could there be a worse time to make up COVID when the man is trying to get out there to prove to his own party that he has the strength to carry on. So how does the song go? I remember it from the early seasons of American Idol. You had a bad day. You sing a sad song.
You had a bad day. You sing a sad song. Yeah.
This has been, you had a bad week. You had a bad month, Joe Biden. And singing a sad song to turn it around ain't going to help right now.
Yeah, Moshe, the chorus of voices calling on Biden to drop out of the presidential race getting louder. And now there's word that former President Barack Obama is saying privately that Biden, quote, needs to seriously consider the viability of his candidacy and that he has basically a slim to no chance of winning the White House in November. There are reports Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and former Speaker Nancy Pelosi have both personally told Biden that he should step aside, going through the numbers with him.
Yeah, there are questions about what his people, his close advisors, were actually telling the president. And so you've had Schumer go to him. You've had Pelosi go to him. They gave him time to, quote, make the right decision. And now they've escalated things through a series of leaks. Jill, fast and furious in the last few days.
And then on Morning Joe on MSNBC, Biden's favorite morning show, host Joe Scarborough urged Biden's, quote, bubble to, quote, help the man they love and do the right thing. There's some reporting from Axios on Thursday that says multiple senior Democrats now expect that Biden could bow out as soon as this weekend, and that even some Biden aides who wanted him to keep running after the debate now see this as a question of when and not if. And then there's the issue of money. Biden met with the film producer and top campaign advisor Jeffrey Katzenberg on Wednesday in Vegas, and according to Semaphore, he told the president that major donors are doubtful about his ability to win in November and have all but stopped writing the kind of big checks that sustain campaigns in the home stretch. However, after that story was published, Katzenberg put out a statement that said that it was a misread of a private meeting and that he and Biden had talked about everything from the convention to new ads. But Moshe, as always, this is Biden's decision to make. He already has the delegates locked up. So it is really up to him.
Yeah, ultimately, this is Biden's call, but there are a lot of people around him. And Jill, despite what Katzenberg might be telling Semaphore there, we're hearing from multiple people that the money has dried up. And there's actually concern that enough donors will no longer donate to the Democratic Party while Biden is the nominee, that it's impacting House races, Senate races. And so, these are the core components of a campaign, right? You got to get people to vote for you. A majority of Democrats now, 2/3 of Democrats and Democratic leaners say the president should no longer be the nominee. You have senior leaders in the Democratic Party. You need them to support you. They want him out. Then you need money to run a race, and that's dried up. So what I find really notable here, especially with that Katzenberg meeting, is that it's Katzenberg and Steven Spielberg who are going to be producing the Democratic convention in just a few weeks in Chicago. And now there's a real question about who their lead actor or actress is going to be at the convention, as they tell the story of the party and why Americans should vote Democrat this fall. And it comes off what has been a pretty successful Republican convention here. They've been hitting a lot of interesting messages, a lot of constituencies here. And now we're 4 months from the election. Huge questions here on the Democratic side. And while some people say, oh my God, it's only 4 months till the election, that's a only in America thing. Post elections abroad, democracies abroad, they have their elections in a matter of weeks, sometimes a couple of months. We're the only modern developed democracy that goes like 2 or 3 years with our election here. That said, the rules are antiquated. There's questions about whether, if Biden was to step aside, what the rules would say about transferring the money, ensuring the right name of the new nominee is on the ballot in all 50 states. Though honestly, given the dire numbers they're seeing polling wise, that right now it looks like it could be a Trump landslide win. He's up in states like Virginia. Virginia hasn't gone Republican in 20 years. So forget about the battleground states. He's losing core blue states according to polling right now. So as far as Democrats are concerned, they can't do worse than Biden. They can only do better than Biden as far as they're concerned if they put anyone else in there. And that's why there's been this huge push here. Now, there are attempts here from the Biden campaign to contact delegates, make sure they're staying on board here. Remember that Biden has more than 90% of the delegates, which is why it really falls on him to announce that he's done here. That's the push here, as opposed to some sort of hostile takeover of the party. He's been saying, I've made my decision. I'm in it. No one seems to buy it. Every time I refresh these political websites, Jill, I see someone else coming out late in the afternoon on Thursday. Jamie Raskin, the notable congressman from Maryland, he was the latest Democrat to go public with his call for Biden to go here. So the pressure really is building. The walls, as they say, are closing in on Joe Biden. Vice President Harris has been on the campaign trail. She spoke in North Carolina while Biden's stuck in Delaware with COVID. And so, she's been on the attack. The big question is, if it's not him, it's probably her, right? Ultimately, she's the vice president. He would likely say, well, she's my heir apparent. She's been beside me for 4 years. I endorse her. The question after that is, does the party then rally around Kamala Harris? Or does the party say, hey, Joe, we'd actually like to take it to the convention like we did for like 200 years until the 1970s and have a debate about who should the nominee be? And so that's the next step. The first step is Joe stepping aside. The second step is most likely a Kamala endorsement. The third step is, does the party rally around her, or do they want to discuss options like Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, California Governor Gavin Newsom, Maryland Governor Wes Moore, and a few others. And there's a huge debate as to whether it's even realistic to bypass Kamala Harris. She's, again, been on the national ticket for 4 years. She's been vice president. She would be the first Black and Asian. She's already the first Black and South Asian woman vice president. She would be the first as president. A core constituency group is Black women in the Democratic Party. If she's passed aside, how will they react a few months before the election? Will there be some sort of pseudo boycott? They need those voters in places like Georgia, in places like Milwaukee, in places like Philadelphia. And so that'll be one of the many questions we ask. And so, Jill, unexpected news last weekend. And this weekend, we might have some more unexpected news.
I'm not leaving my phone on me this weekend, Moshe, so you're on your own.
But just a heads up, folks, I'm driving to my brother-in-law's bachelor party, so there's going to be a few hours over the weekend where you're like, why isn't Moshe reporting this? Because he's driving in Vermont. But we'll try our best to stay on top of everything for you on the Instagram feed.
It was really interesting, though, because Kamala Harris had a campaign event on Thursday in North Carolina. She does campaign events all the time and gives speeches all the time to little to no fanfare.
Yeah, she's the vice president. Nobody really pays attention.
Everybody was covering this. It was as if it was like people were waiting for some announcement. I mean, if you flip through the cable channels, you were like, what is going on here? Why is everyone covering it? And it's just, I think, a sign of where we are right now.
Right. It's amazing because half the conversation, sometimes more than that, of all the various media outlets at the Republican convention is about the Democrats. Usually the biggest story during convention week every 4 years is that convention. And we happen to be in a rare situation here where the biggest story in the world is this Democratic infighting, the circle, the firing squad of sorts that's happening against Joe Biden, including from the Clintons, from the Obamas, from Pelosi. It's interesting because if you think back, there was that George Stephanopoulos interview, Jill, the first interview that Joe did after the debate, where Stephanopoulos made a point of saying, hey, if these senior Democratic leaders come to you and say, time's up, what would you do? And he said, what if Pelosi came to you and Schumer came to you and Obama came to you? And Joe's response to that was, that'll never happen. And that has happened in the last 2 weeks. So that is where we're at. And this is a fascinating political story, psychological story, right, Jill? You know, you're getting in the mind of Joe Biden here, the leader who's decided he's going to run again. And everyone around him is saying, no, time's up. What are you going to do? And you have all the power. So there's questions of loyalty to party, to country, to self, to family. Fascinating what we're living through right now, Jill. These past 6 days, starting, I would say, past 3 weeks, going back to that debate, but really the past 6 days with the assassination attempt through today have been incredible, even as somebody who's covered these issues in politics going back a couple decades now.
We're going to have a little bit more on the assassination attempt and what we're learning about the shooter. But even the fact that was less than a week ago is wild because it feels like so much has happened already since then. The pace of this news cycle, certainly one that's hard to keep up with. And you could literally imagine somebody writing a book just about kind of like 1 month, like the month of July 2024.
Oh, there's an entire book to be written about this week, Jill.
Mark it down, Moshe. It'll be
Jill,
what we're reading for in about a year
Let's
from
put
now.
in the book. Let's put in the offer right now to Simon & Schuster. We'll write the book.
All right, time for the speed read. Let's start with the investigation into last weekend's assassination attempt of former President Trump from the Washington Post. The 20-year-old Pennsylvania man who tried to kill the former president at a rally last weekend had searched online for information about Trump and President Biden and had photos of both men saved on his phone. This is according to lawmakers and other people briefed on the investigation. They say that Thomas Matthew Crooks visited the site of Trump's rally nearly a week in advance. In addition to Trump and Biden, he also had photos of Attorney General Merrick Garland and a member of the British royal family saved on his phone. He also had searched for information about major depressive disorder, the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and the Democratic National Convention scheduled for August. And we are learning that Crooks arrived at the rally site Saturday morning, hours before the event was to begin. He was spotted and flagged as suspicious an hour before the rally started. Again, according to a senator who was part of a briefing this week.
Jill, we're also learning that local police, we've been talking about the divide here of communication between local police and Secret Service, that local police apparently alerted Secret Service and sent them a photo of Crooks 26 minutes before he opened fire from that rooftop. We've been talking about it, that they spotted him. He was suspicious. Apparently now a call went in, a comms went in to the Secret Service. They have a lot of questions to answer. In fact, there are some senators now who are very upset they haven't gotten answers yet. And they actually, two of them, confronted the Secret Service director at the RNC this week. We posted the video over on Instagram. You see Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming. You see Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee confronting her, the Secret Service director, Kimberly Cheadle, at the RNC. Cheadle says this is not the right venue right now with the cameras here, et cetera, to be talking about all of this. But they feel their questions are not being answered. Here, take a listen to a bit of this that Marsha Blackburn, the senator from Tennessee, posted over on X.
Why would anyone allow the president to go on stage when you know you've got a potential threat and you've got snipers that are trained on it? Why? I don't think that this is the format of this discussion.
You hung up on it.
Jill, potentially a sign of things to come for Cheadle when she testifies on Capitol Hill in the coming weeks here. The senator's not even waiting for that, deciding that they want answers and they want it now, and they're recording her as they're doing it. Never really seen that before, but clearly it shows where things stand right now. There's a massive dearth of information members of Congress feel they have when it comes to an assassination attempt on the former president. And despite the massive investigation here, avalanche of media attention, very little information has surfaced about Crooks, his interests, his beliefs. There's a New York Times story out in the last day where they interviewed a guy who went to middle school and high school with him, a guy named Vincent Tarmina. And he said that Crooks, as he was growing up, by the way, Crooks wasn't that old, right? Crooks was 20 years old, has showed a general disdain for politicians in both parties. Apparently, at one point when they were in junior high, he said some negative things about Trump, saying people are stupid if they support Donald Trump. But then again, he apparently also shared criticism of Biden here. So there's a lot of questions as to what was going through Crooks's mind. They haven't found any evidence yet of any co-conspirators or connections to foreign actors here. They did find that he had a second cell phone, according to one report, which is being investigated here. And speaking of his cell phones, they did find that he had searched at some point about major depressive disorder, that he was going through some mental health issues as well. Notably, his parents are both counselors, but they were not closely involved in day-to-day details of his life. But apparently, in recent weeks, he had received a bunch of packages, including hazardous materials. Remember, we've told you on the pod earlier this week that they discovered 3 explosive devices connected to him, one in his home, 2 others in his vehicle that was parked at the rally. They discovered 2 of those explosive devices had a radio-controlled initiation system intended for commercial fireworks demonstrations. So it appears he might have had some other stuff that he was planning to do, or at least a backup plan there with the explosives in his car. But again, no ideological pattern here. So we'll see what we learn here. But as of tomorrow, we're 1 week out from the assassination. One thing they have found, he was part of an online platform where gamers talk called Steam. And on Steam, on his message board, he wrote, "July 13th will be my premiere. Watch it as it unfolds." Of course, July 13th was last Saturday when he attempted to shoot the president.
Moshe, now to one of the biggest campaign issues this year, immigration, and some new numbers. This from CBS News. The number of migrants unlawfully crossing the U.S. southern border has continued to drop markedly in July, nearing a threshold that would require officials to lift a partial ban on asylum claims enacted by President Biden. This is according to internal government data obtained by CBS News. July is on track to see the fifth consecutive monthly drop in migrant apprehensions along the U.S.-Mexico border, and the lowest level in illegal immigration since the fall of 2020 during the Trump administration. If you remember, back in early June, President Biden invoked a far-reaching presidential authority to suspend the entry of most migrants entering the U.S. illegally, effectively shutting off access to the American asylum system outside of official ports of entry once entries hit a certain level.
Yeah, so illegal border crossings, which were already falling in the spring before his action, have plunged further. They're at a 3-year low as of June, but that's only after we've seen a record surge for 3 years, Jill. We went through a 3-year period between 2021 and 2024 where more than 100,000 undocumented migrants were coming across every month. In fact, there were 6 or 7 months there where more than 200,000 undocumented migrants would come in a month. That's levels we haven't ever seen before. The levels back when Trump was president, pre-COVID, were at about 50,000 a month or less than 50,000 a month. So they've more than doubled, at times quadrupled during the Biden presidency. But he says that he has been able to crack it down. Here. The question for many, though, is it too little too late? The issue has taken center stage at the RNC this week. It was among the many topics that was discussed at the convention. In particular, Texas Governor Greg Abbott was at the convention on Wednesday night, where he addressed the convention hall, and you could hear chants. He was leading the crowd there, the delegates, in chants of "Send them home, send them home," a mass deportation policy that Trump has talked about, sending between 12 and 20 million undocumented migrants, deporting them in some way, shape, or form. It's unclear how it would happen logistically. But first, take a listen here to a bit of Abbott and the sounds of the Republican National Convention this week.
He will enforce the immigration laws. He will fight the Mexican drug cartels. And he will arrest the criminal illegal immigrants and put them behind bars. Or send them back.
So, Jill, I think you can make out there the chance of "send them home." Also, you saw signs, "mass deportation now," on the floor. And again, the focus in recent years has been about folks who come across, undocumented migrants who come across and commit crimes. The focus should be on them, given the resources, given the expense here, and also just given the impact on the U.S. economy. You know, it goes without saying, but it's pretty apparent these days, how many industries depend on undocumented labor, including agriculture and other industries. And so they've talked about a multi-trillion-dollar hit to the U.S. economy over several years. If this was to happen, if the mass deportation was to happen, that there aren't necessarily Americans to fill all these jobs, despite what we said. At the same time, you hear from advocates here that they're putting a strain, undocumented migrants are putting a strain on the system, on healthcare, on education. And so something needs to be done about the border. So we'll see how this issue unfolds through the fall, what the numbers on the border are, and whether that impacts people's decision-making here. And then, of course, what President Trump, if he's elected again, is able to actually accomplish this go-around, given that last go-around, remember, he was going to build a wall, make Mexico pay for it, a whole variety of things, a number of which he wasn't able to accomplish necessarily. Jill, this all comes as we got new numbers from the Federal Reserve this week. Their branch in San Francisco estimates that anywhere from 3 to 4 million undocumented migrants may come into the U.S. this year. However, given the numbers have been going down, it might not be that, but you're still probably looking at least 2, upwards of potentially 3 million undocumented migrants coming across the border in 2024.
From CNBC, online spending in the United States surged 11% year over year to $14.2 billion during Amazon's 48-hour Prime Day event, topping estimates and setting a new record. This is according to Adobe Analytics, which says the strong showing was driven by back to school shopping and an apparent product refresh cycle, as they're calling it, as consumers are looking to snap up new tablets, TVs, and Bluetooth speakers in droves. They say shoppers couldn't get enough of Amazon branded Fire TV sticks, Premier protein shakes, and liquid IV packets, while home goods and household essentials, as well as apparel and shoes, were also among the top categories. And that is a shift from last year, when shoppers who are a bit more inflation weary used the discount event to stock up on household essentials, things like pantry staples and office supplies. So, Moshe, I'm currently Googling liquid IV packets.
Hydration is important, Jill. It's hot outside. So, as we see record temps, I imagine that's what tempted people to get more there. Jill, just running the numbers there, $14 billion over 48 hours. We're talking about $300 million an hour that people were spending on Amazon over the last couple of days. So Adobe here tracks transactions, not just on Amazon, but across a whole bunch of U.S. retail sites. Amazon's Prime Day event, which ran both Tuesday and Wednesday, has become a huge revenue driver for other retailers who often hold competing sales timed around Prime Day. Amazon says that it saw record-breaking Prime Day revenue, but they haven't broken out those numbers. And they also touted their new AI assistant. I don't know how many of you have used Rufus yet, their shopping assistant, but apparently it's generative AI that helps you determine what you need, sort of a shopping buddy of sorts. So they've been testing out this system called Rufus, and let us know how it is if any of you utilized it.
I have a shopping buddy. Her name is Alex. It's your wife.
Right, my wife.
Use her list.
My wife is a person, not AI person, who has an Amazon store. We linked to it in the newsletter this week. A lot of great home goods, a whole variety of things across the spectrum: books, kids stuff, home goods, cooking stuff. It's great.
Okay, from the New York Times, a look at the state of toilet paper. The toilet paper aisle at your local store crowded with products that claim to be more sustainable, including from bamboo and recycled material to products with forest-safe labels. If you're in the U.S., the roll in your bathroom right now most likely comes from somewhere in North or South America. It could be a blend of trees from the U.S., Southeast, and the forests of Canada, or maybe even from eucalyptus grown in Brazil. Those sources present several environmental problems. Chipping away at the planet's old, intact forests and replacing native woodlands is terrible for biodiversity, and it is also really bad for the climate because big, mature trees store a lot more planet-warming carbon than saplings planted in their place. And on top of that, logging projects have also displaced indigenous communities around the world. There are a couple of solutions in your local store aisles or online these days. Recycled paper keeps trees in the ground and requires fewer resources to produce. There are current estimates that the tissue from 100% recycled material requires about half as much water and 37% less total energy than using fiber from freshly cut trees. It produces roughly 70% less greenhouse gases. But Moshe, how is it on the tush? I don't know.
How many ply? I get it. It's a big thing for people. But I love this story that came out this week because it's something that we all need to utilize on a daily basis, but we don't often think about it. Like, what is in our toilet paper? You mentioned recycled paper as one item there. The challenge there is that the supply of recycled material has fallen as the use of certain paper products has declined. We're printing less things out, which means less things are getting recycled, which means there's less recyclable paper to then make that toilet paper. Option 2, beyond the recycled paper. If you're feeling a bit bold, there is the bidet route. We talked about this during COVID. The New York Times notes that despite what you may think, it actually saves water. The process of making toilet paper actually leads you to use more water than people realize. And actually, so a bidet, if you have one of those devices, allows you to save water. And then another option here is bamboo toilet paper. This is a growing alternative here to tree-based products. What's great about bamboo toilet paper is it's a grass and not a tree. Bamboo grows faster, occupies less land, and converting bamboo fibers to paper also requires less water than using wood. Jill, it's one of the things we've been using in our household. There's a brand called Plant Paper, one of the newer bamboo options out there. An easy segue for us here. Plant Paper has become one of our new partners here at Mo.news. The folks at Plant Paper use bamboo. It's the fastest growing plant on the planet. It's capable of growing up to a meter per day. And unlike trees, bamboo is harvested, not clear cut. So you can continue to harvest it every couple years. The great thing about Plant Paper, it's PFAS free. We've talked about PFAS before, those forever chemicals. And in addition to that, they're also bleach-free and formaldehyde-free. And there's forever chemicals that have been found in a number of toilet paper brands. We've talked about this before. They go into the water supply. They have an environmental impact. They've also been linked to health issues like reproductive issues, developmental delays, potential birth defects here. And so what we're loving right now about Plant Paper is you can order it online. We have a subscription. It's delivered on the regular. And they're offering right now a special deal to the Mo News community, 25% off your first order of a subscription here. We have a link in the show notes. The code is MoNews. Head over to plantpaper.us. Use the code MoNews for 25% off. And check out the feeling of bamboo on the tush there, Jill.
Moshe, my question remains, how is it on the tush?
We like it.
That's the test.
Jill, it does the job, and it's good for the environment.
Okay, from Axios, the WNBA's next national media rights package has come into shape. The league is set to receive roughly $2.2 billion over the next 11 years in rights fees in its new deals. That is an average of $200 million a year, with an opening to earn more over that period. And that's 3 times more than its current deal. It's just the revenue from 3 partners, Disney, Amazon, and Comcast. But the league could cut 1 or 2 additional side deals for about another $60 million per year.
This is a big deal that it starts with a B here and not an M, as in billion. 15 WNBA games this season have averaged at least 1 million viewers. Before this season, the league hadn't had a game average 1 million viewers since opening night of 2008. Now, 13 of those 15 games, Indiana Fever games, starring, who else? Rookie Caitlin Clark. So as you mentioned earlier, this is the Caitlin Clark effect right now. And so at this rate, $200 million a year, that's several times more than what they have been getting. The WNBA's deal so far was $50 million a year. So clearly bringing in some new revenue here. Hopefully that helps them pay their players more. But just to give you some perspective, this $2.2 billion deal that they've signed over 10 years, the NBA, because of its popularity and its ratings, just signed a $75 billion deal. So the NBA is still exponentially higher here, but the WNBA is starting to, again, get into the billions here and they have high hopes there that their audience will continue to grow.
From The Hollywood Reporter, legendary actor and comedian Bob Newhart has passed away. He was known for his deadpan delivery as a stand-up comedian and later for several iconic television and movie roles. Newhart was 94 years old. He remains best known for the television shows The Bob Newhart Show and Newhart, both of which were built around his persona as a reasonable man put upon by crazies. Back when comedians put out records of their performances, he was a star. His debut album, The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, soared past the pop and rock recordings of Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley to stand at number 1 on the Billboard charts for 14 weeks in 1960. And it was the first comedy album to sell more than 1 million copies. Newhart remains the only comedian to win Grammy Awards for Best New Artist and Album of the Year.
Fun little factoid there for everyone when we discovered that he outsold Sinatra and Presley back when you'd buy those comedy albums, those comedy records. In later years, new generations would discover Newhart as Papa Elf, as he starred in the holiday movie Elf opposite Will Ferrell. He also had recurring roles on Desperate Housewives and ER. He won an Emmy Award about 10 years ago for a guest appearance as Professor Proton over on The Big Bang Theory. Jill, I like this quote from Newhart's memoir. He wrote it back in 2006. He wrote that, quote, "Comedy is a way to bring logic to an illogical situation, of which there are many in everyday life. I've always likened what I do to the man who's convinced that he is the last sane man on earth." And while we're talking about losses, we also learned yesterday that news personality Lou Dobbs passed away. He was 78 years old. You might remember him from his shows on CNN, Lou Dobbs Tonight. It then eventually went over to Fox. He was a political commentator, a conservative, who in recent years became very close to Donald Trump, who incidentally announced Dobbs' death on his Truth Social account yesterday. Dobbs was a major vocal supporter of Trump in recent years, calling him a gift from God. They were very close. And in fact, so close that Dobbs, because he was reinforcing Trump's claims about how the election was stolen, that Dobbs was part of that lawsuit against Fox for the claims about impropriety in 2020. And it actually led Fox to fire Dobbs, among others, as they faced and then eventually settled that lawsuit.
All right, Moshe, it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend. Time for what we are watching, reading, and eating. Kick it off. What will you be watching?
Hillbilly Elegy over on Netflix, Jill. I've never seen the film version of it, and several of you messaged me that it's a fascinating watch, especially given the evolution, the political evolution that J.D. Vance has taken since he wrote the novel. Ron Howard has spoken also that he's surprised by the political evolution that Vance has had. So I think it's a good opportunity to check that out. What are you watching?
There's a movie out on Disney Plus. It is called Young Woman in the Sea. It is the story of a competitive swimmer, Trudy Ederle, who in 1926 was the first woman to ever swim across the English Channel. It's getting the Disney treatment, so I'm not sure if it's going to be exactly true to
animated.
No, not animated.
Okay.
But usually one weekend night, I do a movie night with my daughter. We do like a family movie night. And I'm hoping that this is the movie that we settle on. Usually she picks, and it's not the most fun for me and my husband. But this one feels like it could be mutually enjoyable. So I'm hoping, I'm going to strongly suggest we watch this one.
All right. Jill, there's a theme this weekend because I noticed in your what you're reading list, it bears a resemblance to what I'm watching.
I'm reading. Well, that's right. Hillbilly Elegy. I'm going to start actually the audiobook. And I'm looking forward to it because I never actually read the book. So I not only never saw the movie, but I never read the book when it came out. So I'm looking forward to reading the book and really getting a better understanding of who is J.D. Vance. And if for whatever reason I can't get past the first chapter, which happens occasionally, I'll be with you watching the Netflix movie.
straight to film. It's Glenn Close. It got Ron Howard. It's not some shabby make of a book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you reading?
Jill, I think I mentioned it on the pod a few weeks ago, Demon of Unrest, but I'm finishing it right now, just finished it, but I'm in the midst of finishing it because I had the opportunity this week to speak with Eric Larson, the award-winning, best-selling author. You might remember him from a variety of the books that he's written. I actually have several behind me on the shelf. If you're watching on YouTube, Devil in the White City is probably among the most famous. So had the opportunity to interview him. That'll be up on the premium pod in the next couple days for you premium subscribers, where we talk about his time as a journalist, Jill, how he became an author, how he gets his inspiration for his stories, how he'll spend 4 or 5 years researching and writing a book. He loves to go to the Library of Congress. He hates online research. He loves just regular research. And we talk about why he thought it was time to add to the estimated 66,000 books about the U.S. Civil War. That's how many books have been written about the Civil War and related topics. And so he's written one, Demon of Unrest. It's fascinating because it just focuses on 5 months, the period between Lincoln being elected and him being inaugurated in the beginning of the war. Lincoln's basically president-elect, and the whole country comes apart at the seams. And by the time, from the time he's elected, there's a country. And by the time he's inaugurated in March, half the country has seceded from the Union. And so so he delves into that. It's fascinating. And if you're a premium sub, you'll, I know, enjoy the conversation.
All right, now to my favorite section. What are we eating?
Jill, what do you got?
Okay, so I'm actually going to be trying this new viral pickle sandwich. I don't know if you've heard of this, but basically instead of using bread, they scoop out a pickle and then you can fill it with whatever you want. So one of my friends tried turkey and cheese, and she said it's really good. It's definitely like on the juicier side, but she said it's great. And there's a deli near there's a deli on Long Island called Schmear in Port Washington that apparently does a nice job with it. So I think I'm going to check that out.
Jill, please be sure to tell us on Monday if it was delicious.
Very, very punny, Moshe.
Yeah, sorry, it's Friday. I'm out of steam.
Okay, what are you eating?
I mentioned I'm headed up to Stratton, Vermont. There's a restaurant up there called Honey Pie with great burgers. Looking forward to getting my fix up there.
All right, everybody. It has been a week. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. Thank you for getting us to 5 million downloads. So appreciate it. Please, again, just share this with your friends because it will help us get to our next 5 million.
Yes, in short order, especially in these times, Jill. I think we put out 6 daily podcasts and interview podcasts this week. A lot of hours of content for all of you. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. I hope we've been able to bring you the information that you need to help you understand what's going on. We're still trying to get our heads around it. So stick with us, stay calm. And if you haven't joined Premium already, head over to mo.news/premium and join for just $7 a month. It's a way to support us. It's a way to get the premium podcast. It's a way to get news on the weekends. But I understand some of you who just want to break on the weekends. And otherwise, we'll see you back here on Monday.
All right. Bye, everyone.